Hey there, sweet dreamer. Welcome back to Sleepy Atom. This is our safe little corner of the night where the world turns its volume all the way down, where worries loosen their grip, and where the gentlest stories carry us across the softest bridge into sleep. Tonight we're leaving every heavy thing behind. We're only taking love, warmth, and the quiet promise that you are deeply, perfectly held. If you're already cozy under the covers, take one more slow breath with me. In through the nose, hold it gently and let it go. Beautiful. Before we begin, please tap that like button so this little lantern of peace can find more tired hearts. Subscribe and ring the bell if you want to fall asleep here often, and whisper in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. I love knowing we're all tucked in together across the world. Tonight's journey is the second in our series of the kindest near-death experiences ever told. It's called The Train That Only Runs at Twilight. Close your eyes whenever you're ready. I'll be right here, speaking softly every step of the way until you're safely, peacefully asleep. The first thing Thomas noticed was the quiet hum. Not silence, but the gentle, constant thrum of something vast and alive, like standing inside a seashell and hearing the whole ocean breathing. He opened his eyes, expecting the familiar white ceiling of the hospital room, the steady beep of monitors, the antiseptic smell that had become his world for the last weeks. Instead, he found himself standing on an old wooden platform, bathed in the softest twilight he had ever seen. The light was neither day nor night. It was the color of warm peach and lavender mixed together, the exact shade the sky turns just before the first star appears on summer evenings when you're a child, and the whole night stretches ahead, full of promise. There was no sun, no moon, yet everything was perfectly illuminated, as though the air itself had decided to glow with gentle kindness. The platform stretched left and right into gentle mist, old-fashioned lanterns floating a few feet above the boards instead of hanging from posts. They drifted lazily, bobbing like fireflies made of stained glass, casting pools of golden light that never quite touched the edges of shadow. The wood beneath his feet was smooth from countless footsteps, yet warm, as if it remembered every traveller who had ever waited here and kept their warmth for the next. Thomas looked down at himself. He was wearing the soft grey sweater his granddaughter Lily had knitted him 2 Christmases ago, the one with the slightly uneven sleeves she'd been so proud of. His hands, once thin and veined from age and illness, were steady now, the skin smooth, but still carrying the faint calluses from years of fixing bicycles and building tree houses. He flexed his fingers, marveling at how easily they moved, how alive they felt. A gentle breeze moved across the platform, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass after rain, warm bread baking, and something deeper. The particular smell of his childhood bedroom on summer mornings when the window was open and his mother was singing downstairs. The breeze brushed his cheek like a familiar hand, and with it came the softest whisper. "You're expected." Thomas felt tears rise, not sorrow, but the kind that come when something too beautiful to name finally arrives. He had been tired for so long. The cancer had taken pieces of him slowly, quietly, until breathing itself felt like work. But here, on this quiet platform, bathed in impossible twilight, he felt lighter than he had in decades. The floating lanterns bobbed closer, as if sensing his wonder. One drifted right in front of his face, revealing delicate patterns etched into the glass. Tiny scenes of children chasing fireflies, old couples holding hands on porch swings, families gathered around holiday tables. The light inside pulsed gently, matching the rhythm of his heart, which beat steady and strong for the first time in years. He reached out to touch the lantern. His fingers passed through the glass as if it were warm mist, yet the light soaked into his skin, leaving a faint glow behind. The sensation was familiar, like the way sunlight used to feel on his arms when he worked in the garden, or the warmth of Lily's small hand in his as they walked to the park. Thomas stood there a long time, or perhaps no time at all, simply breathing in the twilight air that tasted of every good thing he'd ever known. The platform felt like the edge of a dream he'd been having his whole life, the one where everything difficult falls away and only love remains. In the distance, he heard it, the soft, distant sound of a train whistle, not mournful, but welcoming, like a voice calling you home for supper. The sound wrapped around his heart and squeezed gently. He was ready. The ticket appeared in his pocket without ceremony, as natural as finding a forgotten note from someone who loves you. Thomas felt its edges first. Thick, creamy paper, with a slight texture like the stationery his wife Margaret used to use for love letters when they were young and apart for the summer. He drew it out slowly. The ticket was simple, yet beautiful. Deep indigo with gold lettering that caught the floating lantern light. Across the top, in handwriting that looked remarkably like his own from better days, were the words, "One journey home, reserved seat, Thomas James Whittaker." No departure time was printed, only the gentle assurance, "When you're ready." He turned it over. On the back, in Margaret's familiar script, the same looping cursive she'd used for 47 years of grocery lists and love notes, was written, "We've been saving your place. All my love, always." Monsieur Thomas's breath caught. Margaret had been gone 12 years now, her passing quiet and peaceful after a long illness he'd cared for her through with the same devotion she'd shown him in his final months. He'd kept her last note, written on similar paper, tucked in his wallet until the cancer made carrying a wallet too much trouble. The nurses had given it back to him with his things, and he'd held it until the end. Now here was her handwriting again, steady and sure, promising what his heart had known but his mind had feared to believe. She was waiting. He traced the letters with fingers that no longer trembled. The paper felt warm, alive, as if her hand had just let go of it moments ago. A faint scent rose from it, her lavender water, the particular blend she'd worn every day of their married life, mixed with the vanilla she used in baking. Thomas pressed the ticket to his chest, right over his heart that beat strong and steady now. The floating lanterns responded, drifting closer until he stood in a gentle circle of their light. Each one revealed new scenes in their glass, Margaret young and laughing on their wedding day, the two of them slow dancing in their kitchen to radio static, because the song didn't matter, a hand in his during quiet evenings when words weren't needed. The platform itself seemed to hum with anticipation, wood warm beneath his feet, as if sharing his joy. The distant train whistle sounded again, softer this time, closer, carrying the particular promise of reunion. Thomas slipped the ticket back into his pocket, right over his heart where it belonged. He wasn't afraid, he wasn't sad. He was ready in the way you're ready for the best part of a story you've waited your whole life to reach. The lanterns bobbed encouragingly, light pulsing in gentle rhythm. It's time. She's waiting. You're almost home. Thomas smiled. The full, uncomplicated smile he hadn't worn since before the diagnosis, and took one step toward the edge of the platform, where mist parted to reveal approaching lights. The train was coming. The lanterns floated higher as he waited, arranging themselves into a gentle arch overhead, like a living gateway. They weren't fixed to posts or wires, simply drifted in perfect formation, bobbing slightly as if breathing with excitement. Each one glowed with its own soft color, amber like late summer honey, rose like Margaret's favourite climbing roses, deep indigo like the twilight sky that never quite darkened here. Thomas watched them, marvelling at how naturally they moved, rising when he looked up, dipping closer when he reached out a hand. One drifted low enough that he could see the delicate filigree etched into its glass. Tiny scenes of trains throughout time, but not the grand steam engines of history. These were personal. A little red wagon he'd pulled Lily in when she was 3. The toy train set he and Margaret had set up under their first Christmas tree as a married couple. The commuter train where they'd shared their first real conversation, both pretending to read books while stealing glances across the aisle. The lantern's light pulsed gently when he recognized these moments, as if pleased to be noticed. Warmth spread through his chest, the particular warmth of being seen completely, of having every small joy remembered and cherished. Another lantern joined it, this one glowing soft green like new leaves in spring. Inside its glass drifted scenes of quiet evenings. He and Margaret on their porch swing watching fireflies, the two of them holding hands in hospital rooms, first for her and later for him, the gentle way she'd squeeze his fingers when words failed. The lanterns weren't just lights, they were love, made visible, holding space for him in this in-between place. They floated in patterns that felt like choreography, designed especially for his heart, rising in celebration when he smiled, dipping gently when tears of joy threatened, arranging themselves into the shape of an open doorway when the train's whistle sounded closer. Thomas reached up to touch one. His fingers passed through warm light that left a faint glow on his skin, like being dusted with starlight. The sensation travelled straight to his heart, loosening the last knots of earthly worry he hadn't realized he still carried. The platform boards beneath his feet began to hum in harmony with the lanterns, a gentle vibration that travelled up his legs and settled in his chest. Everything here was alive with welcome, the wood, the light, the very air that tasted of every good thing he'd ever known. In the distance, the train's headlight appeared through the mist. Soft gold, not harsh like earthly headlights, more like dawn, breaking gently over fields he'd loved as a boy. The lanterns responded by brightening, forming a perfect path of light from where he stood to the edge of the platform. Thomas felt laughter bubble up, pure, uncomplicated joy. The lanterns bobbed as if laughing with him, light pulsing in perfect rhythm with his heart. He was ready. More than ready. The train was almost here, and Margaret was waiting. The conductor stood at the top of the steps as the train eased to a perfect stop, steam curling gently into the twilight air like breath on a cold morning. He was tall and kind-faced, uniform pressed, but comfortable, the kind of man you'd trust with your life without hesitation. His eyes, warm brown with flecks of gold, held the particular gentleness of someone who had guided countless travellers home. But it was the familiarity that stopped Thomas's breath. The conductor's smile was his father's smile, the one that had greeted him after little league games win or lose, the one that had steadied him through teenage heartbreak, the one that had been waiting the day Thomas himself became a father. "Dad!" The word came out softer than intended, decades of missing him rising in Thomas's throat. The conductor's smile deepened, crinkling at the corners exactly the way Thomas remembered from childhood mornings when his father woke him for fishing trips. "In a manner of speaking," he said, voice warm with the same gentle gravel that had read bedtime stories and offered quiet wisdom through every hard thing. "Here we wear the faces that mean home to the ones we're welcoming." He extended a hand, strong, calloused in all the right places from years of honest work. Thomas took it without hesitation, feeling the particular steadiness that had carried him through scraped knees and college goodbyes, and the long years of fatherhood itself. "Welcome aboard, son," the conductor said, grip firm and loving. "Your seat's been waiting." The train itself was beautiful in its simplicity. Deep green carriages with brass fittings that caught the lantern light, windows glowing from within with the soft warmth of homecoming. It wasn't grand or modern. It was exactly right, like the trains from childhood storybooks that always arrived precisely when needed. As Thomas climbed the steps, the conductor's hand steady on his elbow, he caught glimpses through the windows. Seats made of what looked like soft clouds tinged with sunset colors, passengers turning with smiles of recognition, faces he hadn't seen in years yet knew instantly. The platform lanterns followed them up the steps, floating gently into the carriage where they settled into fixtures that hadn't been there moments before. Their light mingled with the warm glow inside, creating pools of gold that felt like being wrapped in every hug ever given. The conductor, his father's face gentle with eternal patience, guided him down the aisle. "Take your time," he said softly. "No rush here, only arrival." Thomas walked slowly, marveling at how solid everything felt, how alive. The floor beneath his feet hummed with the gentle power of a journey that had carried countless loved ones home. The air smelled of warm bread and cedar and something deeper, the particular scent of being unconditionally expected. He was home. The seats weren't seats at all. They were clouds, soft and substantial, tinted with every warm color of sunset, peach, rose, amber, the gentle lavender of twilight's edge. Thomas sank into one near the window, expecting to fall through, but the cloud held him perfectly, molding to his shape with the particular comfort of arms that had been waiting decades to hold him again. The texture was extraordinary, cool at first touch like evening air, then warming to match his own temperature, supporting him in all the places earthly chairs never quite reached. It felt like sitting in the memory of every perfect rest, the hammock on his parents' porch during summer storms, the armchair where he'd read to Lily for hours, the hospital bed where Margaret had held his hand through pain and whispered, "Rest now, love." The cloud seat adjusted gently as he settled, cradling his back that no longer ached, supporting his head at the exact angle that invited peace. A faint glow rose from its depths, the same light as the floating lanterns, pulsing softly in rhythm with his heartbeat, which had settled into the steady, strong cadence of perfect health. Through the window, the platform drifted away as the train began to move, not with a jerk, but with the gentle inevitability of tide coming in. The floating lanterns followed for a while, bobbing alongside like old friends waving goodbye, their light reflecting in the glass until they became part of the carriage's own glow. Thomas watched the twilight meadows slide past, fields of grass that shimmered like they were woven from starlight, wildflowers blooming in colors that had no earthly names but felt like specific memories. The deep red of Margaret's favorite lipstick, the soft yellow of Lily's first sundress, the particular blue of the sky the day he'd taught his granddaughter to fish. The train moved without sound or speed that could be measured, yet the landscape changed in perfect rhythm with his heart's quiet joy. Distance here wasn't miles, it was readiness. The further they traveled, the lighter he felt, as if every gentle rock of the carriage released another earthly weight he no longer needed to carry. The cloud seat responded to his thoughts, warming when memories of cold hospital nights surfaced, cooling gently when joy grew too bright to contain. It held him the way Margaret had held him through every hard thing, without judgment, without hurry, with perfect understanding that some journeys simply needed witnessing. Other passengers moved through the carriage, some settling nearby with smiles of recognition, others passing with gentle nods that carried lifetimes of shared understanding. Their seats adjusted to match whatever comfort they needed. Deeper for those carrying recent sorrow, higher for children who'd arrived young and wanted to see everything. Thomas closed his eyes for a moment, letting the motion rock him like the porch swing he and Margaret had shared for 47 years. The cloud seat hummed softly beneath him, a lullaby made of pure acceptance. When he opened them again, the view outside had shifted to fields he recognized, not from Earth exactly, but from dreams. The meadow behind his childhood home, where he'd chased fireflies, the park where he'd taught Lily to ride her bike, the quiet clearing where he and Margaret had picnicked on their first date. The train was carrying him through the landscape of his own heart, polished and perfect, every blade of grass glowing with love's quiet persistence. He was almost there, and the cloud seat held him perfectly, all the way home. The whistle came again, closer now, wrapping around Thomas like the softest blanket on a winter night. It wasn't the sharp, metallic sound of earthly trains, urgent, impatient, bound by schedules. This was a lullaby made of steam and memory, low and rolling, the exact tone his mother had used to call him in from play when he was small. Not commanding, but promising that something better waited inside. The sound travelled straight to his chest, loosening knots he hadn't known were there. It carried every good-night whistle he'd ever heard, the toy train his father wound up on Christmas mornings, the distant freight trains that sang him to sleep on summer nights with windows open, the gentle toot Margaret had made with her fingers when pretending to be a train conductor for Lily's amusement. Thomas closed his eyes and let the whistle fill him. It tasted of warm milk and honey, smelled of cedar toy chests and fresh sheets dried on the line. Each note held a memory. The day he'd taught Lily to whistle with 2 fingers, and she'd finally managed it after 100 tries, the quiet evenings when he and Margaret sat on the porch, listening to far-off trains and talking about nothing and everything, the final night in the hospital when he'd dreamed of this exact sound calling him home. The whistle wasn't just sound, it was invitation, gentle and certain. It promised that everything difficult was over, that every separation was temporary, that love had been keeping perfect time all along. The train itself responded, slowing to the exact pace his heart needed. No hurry, no delay, only a perfect arrival. When the whistle faded, it left behind a silence that wasn't empty, but full. The kind of silence that follows a perfect note, holding space for what comes next. Thomas opened his eyes to find the carriage bathed in warmer light, the floating lanterns pulsing gently in rhythm with the lingering sound. The whistle had done its work. The last earthly weight dissolved completely. He was ready, not just ready, but eager, in the way children are eager for Christmas morning or the last day of school. The train was here, and Margaret was waiting. The fields outside the window weren't fields at all in the earthly sense. They were summers made visible, every perfect childhood. July rolled into one endless golden expanse. Thomas watched them glide past with the wonder of a man seeing his own heart laid bare and beautiful. The grass shimmered like it was woven from sunlight and memory, tall enough to brush the train's underside with a soft, whispering sound. Fireflies drifted through it in slow motion, millions of them, spelling out names and dates and small joys in cursive light. The summer he turned 8 and caught his first fish, the year he and Margaret bought their first house with its tiny patch of lawn, the afternoons teaching Lily to catch lightning bugs in mason jars they'd release before bed. Wildflowers bloomed in impossible abundance, black-eyed Susans the exact yellow of his mother's kitchen curtains, daisies like the chains Lily used to make for everyone on lazy afternoons, roses in every shade Margaret had ever planted along their fence. The colours weren't just seen, they were felt, warm as bare feet on sun-heated grass, sweet as watermelon juice running down chubby arms, bright as laughter echoing across backyards. Thomas recognized specific places woven into the landscape: the meadow behind his childhood home, where he'd lain watching clouds turn into dragons and ships; the park where he'd pushed Lily on swings until his arms ached and his heart overflowed; the quiet field where he and Margaret had picnicked on their 25th anniversary, with store-bought chicken and expensive wine drunk from plastic cups. The train moved through these summers without disturbing them. Grass didn't bend, flowers didn't fade, fireflies continued their gentle choreography. Time here was generous, every perfect moment stretched to be savoured fully, no rushing toward autumn or responsibility. A breeze moved through the open windows. Trains here didn't need closing, carrying the scent of cut grass after mowing, charcoal grills starting up for supper, chlorine from community pools where children screamed with joy. The smells wrapped around him like the particular comfort of ordinary days made sacred. Thomas leaned toward the window, letting the breeze lift his hair that was now thick and dark again, the way it had been before illness and age. The fields responded to his attention, rippling in waves that spelled out welcome in patterns only his heart could read. He saw himself in the distance, 8 years old, running with a kite that would never tangle, 35, pushing Lily on a tire swing, while Margaret watched laughing from the porch, 70, teaching his great-grandson to skip stones on a pond that reflected perfect skies. The child versions waved as the train passed, their joy echoing in his chest. The adult versions smiled with the particular pride of lives well lived in love. The fields of childhood summers stretched endless and intimate, holding every moment of play and wonder and simple being that had shaped him. Nothing was lost. Everything was gathered here, polished by love into its truest form. Thomas sat back, tears falling upward into light that caught them gently. The cloud seat adjusted to hold him through the wonder, warming where his heart expanded beyond his chest. The train carried him on through summers that never ended, only deepened into the particular sweetness of ordinary joy made eternal. He was almost home, and every perfect childhood summer was coming with him. The stations appeared gently, not announced with signs or schedules, but simply arriving when the heart recognized them. The train slowed without jolt, easing alongside platforms that looked exactly right. Some wooden and weathered like the one he'd boarded, others made of light and memory, all bathed in the same warm twilight. The first station was named Grandpa's House, 1962. Thomas's breath caught. The platform held the old porch swing from his grandparents' farm, rocking gently, though no wind touched it. His grandfather sat there, younger than Thomas had ever known him, whittling something small and perfect. He looked up with eyes bright as summer sky, waving with the hand that had taught Thomas to bait a hook and tie a fly. "Keep your seat, son," the conductor said softly from behind him. "This one's just to wave hello." The train paused long enough for Thomas to see his grandmother appear in the doorway, apron dusted with flour, smiling the smile that had meant cookies and safety and unconditional love. She lifted a hand in greeting, and Thomas felt 8 years old again, safe, seen, cherished beyond measure. The train moved on before tears could fall, carrying the wave with it into his heart, where it settled warm and permanent. The next station was First Day with Lily, 2011. The platform held the hospital bassinet where his granddaughter had slept, tiny fists curled like rosebuds. Margaret stood beside it, 40 years younger, eyes shining with the particular wonder of new grandparents. She held infant Lily, wrapped in the blanket she'd crocheted herself, rocking gently. Thomas pressed his hand to the window, feeling the glass warm beneath his palm. Margaret looked up as if she'd heard him, her smile the one that had carried him through every hard thing. She lifted Lily's tiny hand in a wave, and Thomas felt the moment complete. The circle of love that had begun with his own grandparents now extending forward through generations. More stations followed, each named for people who had loved him first or best. Mom's kitchen, 1975, where his mother stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled of every perfect meal. Dad's garage, 1983, where his father looked up from fixing a bicycle with grease on his hands and pride in his eyes. Margaret's garden, 1998, where she knelt among roses that bloomed brighter at her touch. At each one, the beloved figures waved or smiled, or simply stood in perfect presence, their love travelling across the window to settle in his chest like puzzle pieces, finding home. The train never stopped long, just enough for recognition, for gratitude, for the quiet completion of circles begun lifetimes ago. The stations weren't places to disembark. They were love letters made visible, assurances that no one who had shaped him was ever truly gone. They were waiting ahead, in the town the train was carrying him toward, ready for embraces that needed no hurry. Thomas watched them pass with tears that fell upward into light, each station adding depth to the joy growing in his heart. The cloud seat held him through it all, warming where memories touched deepest. The train carried him on, stations drifting by like gentle benedictions. He was almost there, and everyone who had loved him first was coming with him, in the best way, already waiting, already home. The little boy appeared in the seat across the aisle without ceremony, as natural as finding a forgotten toy in a coat pocket. He couldn't have been more than 7, barefoot in overalls faded from countless washings, hair sticking up in the particular way of boys who've been playing hard all day. In his arms he clutched a well-loved teddy bear, brown fur worn thin at the ears, one button eye slightly loose, the exact bear Thomas had slept with from age 3, until he'd outgrown such things and passed it to Lily when she was born. The boy looked up with eyes bright as summer sky, Thomas's own eyes at that age, before life had added its layers. He smiled the gap-toothed grin that had once charmed grandparents and teachers alike. "Hi," the boy said softly, voice carrying the particular wonder of childhood, discovering something magical. "I've been waiting for you." Thomas felt his heart expand beyond his chest. He knew this boy, knew him in the way you know your own reflection before mirrors complicate things. This was himself, the child he'd been before responsibilities and losses, and the slow accumulation of years had taught him to hold joy carefully. The boy held out the teddy bear. "He missed you," he said simply. Thomas took it with hands that remembered exactly how to hold comfort. The bear was warm, soft in all the right places, smelling of cedar toy chests and safety. He pressed it to his chest, the way he had during thunderstorms and first days of school, and every time the world felt too big. "I missed you too," he whispered. To the bear, to the boy, to the child he'd been, who'd never stopped believing in magic, even when adulthood tried to teach him otherwise. The boy scooted closer, settling beside him on the cloud seat that expanded perfectly to hold them both. The teddy bear rested between them like an old friend facilitating reunion. "I kept the good parts," the boy said, leaning against Thomas's arm with the particular trust of children who know they are safe. The running through sprinklers part, the building forts part, the believing in everything part. Thomas wrapped an arm around his younger self, feeling the small shoulders solid and warm. The contact completed something vast, the circle of self that earthly life had separated into before and after, innocent and experienced, joyful and grieving. Together they watched the fields of childhood summers drift past, the boy pointing out specific wonders, the exact spot where he'd caught his first firefly, the tree that had been perfect for climbing, the cloud that had looked exactly like a dragon the day everything felt possible. The train's gentle motion rocked them like the hammock on his parents' porch, the cloud seat holding them in perfect comfort. The teddy bear rested contentedly, but an eye catching lantern light. No words were needed. The boy's presence said everything. The child he'd been had never been lost, only waiting here, where wonder was eternal and joy needed no justification. When the boy finally rested his head on Thomas's shoulder, small hand finding his, the completion settled deep in Thomas's bones. He was whole in a way earthly life had only hinted at. Every age he'd ever been held gently together by love that had never stopped believing in magic. The train carried them on, two versions of the same heart beating in perfect rhythm. They were almost home, and the child he'd been was coming with him, joy intact and eternal. The windows began to show moments Thomas had thought were lost forever. Small, perfect scenes that played out like gentle films projected on twilight glass. They weren't random. Each one appeared exactly when his heart needed its particular comfort. First came the afternoon he and Margaret painted their first apartment together. Cheap paint splattered on old clothes, laughter echoing as they turned walls the color of sunshine, despite knowing they'd lose the deposit. He saw himself young and strong, lifting her to reach the high spots, her delighted shriek when paint dripped on his nose. The memory had faded with years and grief, but here it glowed fresh and bright, every detail perfect. The way her hair curled when humid, the particular warmth of her hand in his. Next appeared the quiet evening after Lily's birth. Thomas holding his granddaughter for the first time, while Margaret slept exhausted and radiant in the hospital bed. Lily's tiny fingers had wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength, her eyes, Margaret's eyes, looking up at him with perfect trust. He'd whispered promises into her soft hair. "I'll teach you to fish, to ride a bike, to know you're loved beyond measure." The moment had been crowded out by years of ordinary busyness, but here it returned complete, the weight of her small body still imprinted on his arms. The windows shifted seamlessly, Christmas mornings with wrapping paper storms and children's delighted screams, summer evenings on the porch swing counting fireflies while Margaret's head rested on his shoulder, quiet hospital nights when they'd held hands and known love was bigger than illness. Some moments were small but luminous. The day he'd fixed Lily's bicycle after her first crash, kneeling in the driveway with grease on his hands while she watched with wide eyes. The ordinary Tuesday when Margaret had danced with him in the kitchen to radio static because the song didn't matter. The moment he'd realized his own father's love had shaped him more than he'd known. Each scene played silently but completely, sound unnecessary, when love spoke so clearly. Thomas watched with tears that fell upward into light, the cloud seat warming to hold him through the wonder. The little boy beside him, his younger self, watched too, pointing occasionally with delight at moments he recognized from the other side of growing up. The windows responded to their attention, lingering on scenes that needed savoring. The last evening with Margaret, when they'd sat together watching sunset, paint the sky colors that felt like promises kept, the quiet pride of watching Lily become a mother herself, the ordinary days of showing up that had added up to a life rich beyond measuring. Nothing was truly lost. Everything difficult had been temporary. Every moment of love had been gathered here, polished by eternity into its purest form. When the windows finally shifted to show the approaching town, lights glowing warm with welcome, the completeness settled deep in Thomas's chest. He was carrying every good thing with him, made whole by love's quiet persistence. The train slowed gently, the whistle sounding one final soft note of homecoming. They were here, and every moment thought lost was waiting, perfect and eternal. The tea appeared in a delicate porcelain cup on the small table that grew from the cloud seat itself, steam curling upward in perfect spirals that carried the scent of every birthday cake ever baked with love. Thomas lifted it carefully, the cup warm but not hot, painted with tiny forget-me-nots that matched the pattern Margaret had chosen for their everyday dishes decades ago. The first sip tasted of his 5th birthday, chocolate cake with lopsided frosting his mother had let him decorate himself, candles that took 3 tries to blow out, the particular joy of being the center of attention in the best way. The flavor bloomed across his tongue, rich cocoa, vanilla that spoke of real beans scraped by careful hands, the slight salt of happy tears when everyone sang off-key but loud. He took another sip and tasted Lily's first birthday, the smash cake Margaret had made from scratch, yellow batter with buttercream roses, Lily's chubby hands diving in with delighted abandon, while Thomas captured it all on a camera that clicked too loudly in the quiet joy. The tea held the sweetness of watching his granddaughter discover flavor, the deeper sweetness of Margaret's hand, steady on his knee under the table, their shared glance that said, "We did this, we made this life." The flavors shifted gently with each sip, the carrot cake from his and Margaret's wedding, simple but perfect, topped with cream cheese frosting, and walnuts because that's what they could afford, and it tasted like beginning. The chocolate fudge cake Lily had requested every year until she was 12, always with extra candles for luck. The quiet sponge cake Margaret had baked on ordinary Tuesdays just because she knew it was his favorite. The tea never cooled, never emptied. It tasted of celebration without pressure, of sweetness shared freely, of love expressed in sugar and flour and the quiet alchemy of ordinary kitchens. Each swallow carried gratitude for hands that had baked through tired evenings and lean times and illnesses, always finding a way to mark moments with something sweet. The little boy beside him, his younger self, watched with wide eyes, teddy bear clutched close. When Thomas offered the cup, the boy took a careful sip, and his face lit with pure wonder. "It tastes like Grandma's kitchen," he exclaimed, voice bright with discovery. Thomas laughed, the sound rich and full. "That's because it is," he said, watching the boy take another sip that tasted of every birthday he'd ever had and ever would share here. The tea held them both in perfect warmth, completing circles across time, the child who'd believed cake could fix anything, the man who'd learned love expressed in ordinary baking was the real magic. They drank together slowly, flavors shifting to whatever memory needed savoring, the cup refilling itself with gentle courtesy. The carriage around them glowed brighter, as if the tea's sweetness fed the very light. Thomas felt the last earthly hunger dissolve, not for food, but for celebration that never had to end. The tea tasted of that now, perfect completeness, love's quiet persistence made edible. He set the cup down gently on the table, that dissolved when no longer needed, warmth lingering in his chest like a promise kept. The train carried them on, tea's sweetness travelling with them. They were almost home, and every birthday cake ever baked in love was coming too in the best way, waiting to be shared again and again. The carriage itself seemed to slow time to a gentle crawl, as if understanding some journeys needed lingering. The motion became barely perceptible, a rocking like a cradle, or the porch swing on quiet evenings when words ran out and presence was enough. Thomas felt the pace match his heart. No hurry, no urgency, only the luxurious stretch of moments given exactly the space they deserved. Outside, the fields of childhood summers drifted by in slow motion, fireflies hanging suspended in air, thick as honey, flowers opening petal by petal so he could witness every stage of their perfect becoming. clouds shifting lazily into shapes that told stories only he would understand. The little boy beside him leaned heavier, teddy bear tucked under one arm, head resting on Thomas's shoulder with the particular trust of children who know they are safe. Time here allowed for this, the simple weight of a child's head, the quiet breathing that synchronized without effort, the gradual deepening of peace that needed no rush. Thomas closed his eyes and let the slowed time carry him through memories at perfect speed. The long afternoon teaching Lily to ride her bike, falling and getting up and falling again until triumph came in one perfect glide. The extended evenings with Margaret on the porch swing, watching sunsets that seemed to last for hours. The quiet hospital nights when time had stretched thin with worry, but love had filled every second. Here, time served love rather than limiting it. Moments that had felt too brief on earth, first steps, last breaths, ordinary days of showing up, were given all the space they deserved. The carriage rocked them gently through these expanded memories, allowing him to live them fully without the pressure of next. The cloud seat cradled them both, adjusting to hold the boy's smaller weight, and Thomas's larger one in perfect balance. The teddy bear rested contentedly between them, butt and eye catching lantern light in gentle pulses that matched the slowed heartbeat of the journey. When Thomas opened his eyes again, the view outside had shifted to scenes of quiet waiting. The porch, where Margaret had sat watching for his car after long days. The hospital window, where Lily had kept vigil during his final weeks. The quiet moments when love had held space across distance and difficulty. Time allowed him to witness the depth of that waiting, the patience, the persistence, the quiet strength of love that never stopped expecting reunion. The carriage gave him all the moments he needed to feel it fully, to understand that every second of earthly separation had been filled with this same gentle anticipation. The boy stirred, looking up with eyes that held every age Thomas had ever been. "We have all the time now," he said simply, voice soft with wonder. Thomas pulled him closer, feeling the truth settle deep. Time here wasn't endless in quantity, but perfect in quality, every moment shaped exactly to what love needed. No rushing toward endings, no clinging to beginnings, only pure presence. The train rocked them through this slowed eternity, carriage glowing with gentle light. The whistle sounded far ahead, soft, welcoming, perfectly timed. They were almost there. And time, generous, gentle, and shaped by love, carried them on at exactly the right pace. Home was waiting, patient as forever. The voices drifted in from the next carriage like a lullaby carried on warm air, soft, overlapping, familiar in the way beloved songs are familiar even when you can't quite place the words. They weren't loud or performative. They were the quiet harmony of people who had all the time in creation to sing together. Thomas recognized the melodies immediately, though they shifted gently between songs. The hymn his mother had sung while rocking him through childhood fevers, the lullaby Margaret had made up for Lily about stars that watched over sleeping children, the silly camp songs his father had bellowed off-key during family road trips. The voices wove them together seamlessly, harmonies rising and falling in perfect response to whatever the heart needed, comfort for old sorrows, joy for shared memories, peace for the quiet journey home. The little boy beside him sat up straighter, teddy bear clutched close, eyes bright with recognition. "That's Grandma," he whispered, pointing toward the carriage door, though no one was visible yet. "And Grandpa, and Aunt Clara." Thomas felt tears rise, happy ones that carried no weight. The singing wasn't separate from him, it was him, and everyone who had ever loved him made audible. The notes held specific warmths, his mother's alto rich as rising bread, Margaret's soprano clear as summer sky, his father's baritone steady as the hands that had taught him to fish. The voices sang softly of ordinary miracles, mornings of coffee and newspapers, evenings of porch swings and fireflies, quiet nights when presence spoke louder than words. They sang of persistence, the love that showed up day after day through hard seasons and good ones alike, the quiet choices that had built lives rich beyond measuring. The carriage door slid open gently, revealing a glimpse of the next space. More cloud seats arranged in loose circles, passengers turning with smiles of welcome, hands raised in gentle greeting. The singing grew warmer, as if sensing his attention, harmonies adjusting to include the particular frequency of his own heart. Thomas stood slowly, the boy's small hand slipping into his. The cloud seat released them with gentle courtesy, warmth, lingering where they'd been. The singing wrapped around them like the particular comfort of walking into a house where supper is ready and everyone you love is already there. They moved toward the door together, man and child, past and present made whole, drawn by voices that had been waiting to sing them home. The teddy bear rested contentedly in the boy's arms, button eye catching lantern light in gentle rhythm with the song. The voices rose slightly in welcome, not louder, but fuller, making perfect space for two more. Thomas felt the last earthly separation dissolve completely. The quiet grief of goodbyes, the ache of missing, the weight of years apart, all transformed into this gentle harmony. The next carriage waited, glowing with the particular light of reunion. They stepped through together, and the singing, soft, perfect, eternal, carried them on. The choice came not as decision, but as gentle knowing. The moment Thomas understood he could sit wherever his heart felt most at home. The carriage had opened into a larger space where cloud seats arranged themselves in loose, welcoming circles, passengers turning with smiles that held lifetimes of shared love. He saw them all at once, yet each face clear and cherished. Margaret first, radiant in the soft blue dress she'd worn on their 25th anniversary, eyes shining with the particular joy of waiting fulfilled. His parents, younger than he'd ever seen them, holding hands with the ease of eternal sweethearts. Lily grown, but with the same mischievous gap-toothed grin she'd had at 7, waving enthusiastically. The seats around them shifted gently, making perfect space. One cloud formation grew slightly higher, shaped exactly for his height with a smaller dip beside it for the boy. Another waited across from Margaret, positioned perfectly for hand-holding across the aisle that wasn't really an aisle, but love's quiet bridge. Thomas moved forward slowly, the boy's hand warm in his, teddy bear tucked under the child's other arm. The singing from the next carriage followed them softly, harmonies adjusting to include their footsteps in perfect rhythm. Margaret stood as he approached. No hurry, only the gentle certainty of reunion. Her smile was every smile she'd ever given him, the shy one from their first date, the radiant one from their wedding day, the quiet one during hard times that said we'll get through this together, the final one in the hospital that had promised I'll be waiting. Thomas released the boy's hand, only to open both arms, stepping into her embrace that had been waiting 47 earthly years and no time at all here. She felt solid and warm and exactly right, the particular fit of bodies that had learned each other across decades of ordinary days and extraordinary love. Her hair smelled of lavender water and the particular warmth of homecoming. Her hands moved across his back in the exact pattern they'd used through every hard thing. Steady, present, saying without words, "I've got you." The boy, his younger self, watched with shining eyes, then moved to Margaret's other side, wrapping small arms around both their waists. The circle completed itself, past, present, and eternal, now held in one gentle embrace. When they finally parted enough to look at each other, Margaret's eyes, those eyes that had been his North Star through every season, held everything. The joy of reunion, the depth of love that had only grown in waiting, the quiet pride of a life well shared. "Welcome home, love," she whispered, voice carrying every endearment ever spoken between them. Thomas felt tears fall upward into light that caught them gently. The cloud seat waited patiently behind him, shaped perfectly for three. He guided Margaret to it, the boy climbing up between them with the ease of children who know they belong. The seat expanded to hold them all, Thomas on one side, Margaret on the other, his younger self tucked safely in the middle, with Teddy Bear resting contentedly across their laps. Other family drifted closer, his parents settling nearby with smiles that held every fishing trip and bedtime story, Lily perching on the arm of a neighbouring cloud with the particular joy of grandchildren who know they are cherished beyond measure. The train's gentle motion resumed, carrying them forward through twilight that promised only deepening peace. The seats held them in perfect comfort, adjusting to every shift of weight or emotion. Thomas took Margaret's hand across the boy's shoulders, feeling Lily's fingers intertwine with his other. The circle was complete. Past and present and future dissolved into eternal now. They were home. And the ones who waited had made perfect space for all of him, every age, every joy, every ordinary miracle of a life lived in love. The tunnel appeared not as darkness, but as pure golden light, warm, encompassing the color of every perfect dawn and sunset rolled into one gentle embrace. The train eased into it without hesitation, the transition seamless as stepping from one room of home into another. The light wasn't harsh or blinding, it was the particular glow of being completely seen and loved beyond measure. It wrapped around Thomas like the softest blanket, carrying away the last faint traces of earthly weight he hadn't realized he still carried, the quiet grief of leaving Lily behind, the small regrets of ordinary days, the ache of a body that had finally failed. The golden light held him gently, dissolving these into pure understanding. It tasted of forgiveness freely given, smelled of every good thing ever known. Warm bread from his mother's oven, Margaret's lavender water on Sunday mornings, Lily's baby powder, freshness after baths. The light itself was made of love's quiet persistence, the kind that shows up day after day, through hard seasons and good ones alike. The cloud seat glowed brighter beneath them, responding to the tunnel's embrace. Margaret's hand tightened in his, her other arm wrapped around the boy who leaned trustingly between them. Lily's fingers squeezed his gently, her presence completing the circle in new ways. The light deepened, revealing gentle patterns, scenes of their shared life woven into its very substance. Young couple laughing over burnt toast in their first apartment, middle-aged parents tag-teaming teenage crises with quiet grace, older pair holding hands through illness, knowing love was bigger than bodies. Each scene dissolved into pure warmth that settled in Thomas's chest, completing circles he hadn't known were open. The tunnel wasn't passage, it was homecoming made visible, love's final gentle removal of every barrier between souls. The boy, his younger self, looked up with shining eyes. "It's like the best hug," he whispered. Margaret laughed softly, the sound rich with completed joy. "The best hug that never ends," she answered. The light responded by brightening gently, wrapping them all in perfect embrace. Thomas felt himself expand to hold it. The vastness of love that had carried him here, the quiet persistence of ordinary days that had built this moment brick by ordinary brick. Time dissolved completely. The tunnel stretched exactly as long as needed, no more, no less, giving space for every final earthly weight to fall away gently, joyfully, completely. When the light finally opened ahead, not ending but transforming, the train emerged into twilight that held every shade of perfect welcome. The town waited below, lights glowing warm from windows that knew his name, streets paved with the particular comfort of homecoming, porches where rocking chairs moved gently in anticipation. The golden light released them softly, its work complete. Thomas felt lighter than light itself, whole, held and radiant with love's quiet completion. Margaret leaned over to kiss his temple. The boy's head rested on his shoulder, Lily's hand still warm in his. The train eased forward toward the station where everyone who belonged was already waiting. They were home. And the golden light, love's gentle bridge, followed them all the way, promising it would never truly end. The train emerged from the golden tunnel into a twilight that felt like the world's gentlest exhale. The light wasn't fading, it was deepening, rich with the colors of every perfect evening ever spent watching the sky shift from day to night with someone you love. There was no true darkness here, only layers of soft indigo, rose and amber that invited rest without demanding it. Thomas felt the change in his bones before he saw it. The gentle release of any lingering earthly tension, the quiet settling into peace that needed no effort. The twilight wrapped around the carriage like a lullaby, made visible, warm and weightless, carrying the particular comfort of porch lights left on for late arrivals. Outside, the landscape had transformed into a town that existed in the exact moment between day and night, when children are called in from play but still beg for 5 more minutes, when couples walk hand in hand without hurry, when the air smells of supper cooking and wood smoke drifting from chimneys that have been keeping homes warm for generations. The streets below glowed softly, not with harsh electric light, but with the gentle illumination of lanterns that floated at porch height, bobbing in welcome. Every window spilled golden warmth that felt like invitation rather than intrusion. The houses weren't grand, they were exactly right. Wrap-around porches with swings that moved gently in unseen breezes, rocking chairs positioned for perfect sky-watching, doors painted colors that spoke of specific memories, the deep green of Margaret's favorite dress, the soft yellow of Lily's childhood bedroom. Thomas stood at the window, Margaret's hand warm in his, the boy, his younger self, pressed close to his side with teddy bear clutched tight. The train drifted slowly above it all, giving them time to take it in. Gardens where flowers bloomed in twilight colors that released fragrance of every good night ever shared. Trees whose leaves rustled with quiet laughter from gatherings long past. Streets that curved gently like arms open for embrace. The twilight held them perfectly. No rush toward night, no pull back to day, only this eternal in-between where everything difficult fell away and only love remained. It tasted of warm milk before bed, smelled of sheets dried on the line, felt like the moment just before sleep when the world softens and worries dissolve. The conductor, his father's gentle face smiling from the doorway, nodded once. "Almost there," he said softly, voice carrying the particular warmth of homecoming. Thomas felt tears rise that carried only joy. The twilight caught them gently, turning them into tiny prisms that floated upward to join the floating lanterns already gathering in welcome. They were here, and twilight, gentle, generous, and eternal, held them all in perfect, ever-deepening peace. The town below wasn't large or small. It was exactly the size love needed to hold everyone who belonged. Thomas watched from the window as the train drifted lower, close enough to see details that made his heart expand beyond his chest. The streets curved gently like arms open for embrace, paved not with asphalt but with something warm and giving that glowed softly underfoot. Every house had its lights on, not harsh or glaring, but the particular golden warmth of lamps turned low for reading or conversation, or simply being together. Porches stretched wide and welcoming, swings rocking in gentle rhythm, rocking chairs positioned for perfect sky-watching or quiet hand-holding. People moved through the streets with unhurried grace, some walking hand in hand, others sitting on steps sharing quiet laughter, children chasing fireflies that left trails spelling out names in cursive light. No one hurried, no one worried. Everyone moved with the particular ease of people who know they are exactly where they are meant to be. Thomas recognized faces in the gentle crowds, old neighbors waving from porches that looked exactly like their earthly ones, only brighter. Friends from long ago lifting hands in greeting. Family members who'd arrived before him, standing at garden gates with smiles that held decades of shared stories. The houses themselves seemed to glow with recognition, windows brightening as the train passed overhead, doors opening gently in welcome, though no one had knocked yet. Gardens bloomed in impossible abundance, roses in every color Margaret had ever loved, vegetable patches heavy with tomatoes that smelled of summer sunshine, herb beds releasing scents of every perfect meal ever cooked with love. The town existed in perfect twilight balance, no true night to fear, no harsh day to endure, only this gentle in-between where everything was softened and made beautiful. The air tasted of wood smoke and fresh bread, and the particular sweetness of ordinary evenings made eternal. Margaret's hand tightened in his. "That one's ours," she said softly, nodding toward a house at the end of a quiet street. Thomas saw it immediately. Their earthly home made perfect. The wraparound porch they dreamed of but never quite afforded. The swing big enough for 3 generations. The garden where every flower they'd ever planted bloomed together regardless of season. The train drifted lower, lanterns floating alongside like an honor guard. The town's lights brightened in gentle greeting, as if the very houses were leaning forward in anticipation. Thomas felt the boy press closer, teddy bear clutched tight, eyes wide with wonder that needed no words. The cloud seat released them gently, warmth lingering where they'd been. They were here, and every light in the town was on for them, warm, welcoming, eternal. The streets welcomed them with the particular comfort of paths walked countless times in memory and dream. Thomas stepped off the train onto ground that felt like the best parts of every street he'd ever loved. The cracked sidewalk in front of his childhood home, where he'd learned to ride a bike. The quiet lane where he and Margaret had walked hand in hand as newlyweds. The path to Lily's school where he'd carried her on his shoulders when her legs grew tired. The surface was warm and giving, glowing softly with embedded light that pulsed gently underfoot like a heartbeat saying, "Welcome home, welcome home." Each step released faint scents, cut grass from childhood summers, autumn leaves from walks with Margaret, spring rain on the driveway where he'd taught Lily to skip stones in puddles. The streets curved gently, guiding without forcing, lined with trees whose leaves shimmered in twilight colors, deep indigo, soft rose, warm amber. Fireflies drifted lazily, spelling out names and dates and small endearments in cursive light before dissolving into warmth that settled on the skin like blessing. People moved along the paths with unhurried joy, some walking alone in quiet contentment, others in pairs or groups sharing gentle laughter. No one hurried. No one worried about time. Everyone carried the particular lightness of people who know they are exactly where they belong. Thomas walked with Margaret's hand in his, the boy skipping ahead, then circling back with the tireless energy of childhood wonder. The teddy bear swung gently from one small hand, button eye catching lantern light in perfect rhythm. The streets responded to their presence, widening slightly to accommodate shared memories, glowing brighter where joy overflowed, releasing scents of specific moments, the particular warmth of pavement after summer rain when they danced barefoot as newlyweds, the crisp autumn smell of leaves during family walks, the gentle spring fragrance of lilacs from Margaret's garden. Houses lined the way, each one perfect in its particular way. Porches with swings that rocked invitingly, windows glowing with the soft light of lamps turned low for reading or conversation, doors painted colors that spoke of the love within. Gardens bloomed along front walks, flowers that released fragrance of every good day ever spent tending earth together. The streets carried them forward without effort, guiding gently toward the house that waited at the end, the one that held their particular shape of home. Every step felt like walking deeper into a memory made real and eternal. Thomas felt Margaret's fingers intertwine more firmly with his, the boy's small hand slipping into his other. The circle completed itself with every pace, past, present, and eternal, now moving together through streets paved with love's quiet persistence. They were almost there. And every street in the town led home, warm, welcoming, eternal. The station clock hung above the platform like a gentle guardian, its face made not of numbers, but of soft glowing symbols that shifted to whatever time the heart needed. Thomas watched it from the train steps, Margaret's hand warm in his, the boy pressing close with teddy bear clutched tight. The clock didn't tick, it pulsed, steady and reassuring, matching the rhythm of every heartbeat that had ever waited for reunion. Its hands moved in slow circles that spelled out quiet truths. You're right on time. No hurry. Love has been keeping perfect time all along. The symbols glowed softly. Some looked like open arms, others like porch swings rocking gently, a few like coffee cups steaming with shared mornings. They shifted as he watched. One became the exact shape of the old wall clock in their first apartment. Another, the cuckoo clock his parents had brought from Germany. Another, the simple digital one from the hospital room that had finally stopped mattering. Time here served love rather than ruling it. The clock's gentle pulse said everything earthly clocks never could. Every moment of waiting had been filled with this same quiet anticipation, every separation temporary, every arrival perfectly timed by hearts that never stopped beating in rhythm. Thomas felt the last earthly concept of time dissolve completely. The worry over minutes lost to illness, the grief of years apart, the quiet ache of watching clocks in waiting rooms. Here was the truth. Love had been keeping its own perfect time all along, gathering every moment into this eternal now. The conductor, his father's gentle face smiling from the platform, nodded once. "The clock says you're right on time," he said softly, voice carrying the particular warmth of fathers who'd waited patiently for their children to come home. Margaret squeezed his hand. "Ah, we all are," she whispered. The boy looked up at the clock with wonder, teddy bear dangling forgotten, as he watched the symbols shift into the shape of a child's drawing of a house, with smoke curling from the chimney, and stick figures holding hands beneath it. The station clock pulsed once more, steady, reassuring, complete. Its light brightened gently, bathing them in the particular warmth of perfect timing. Thomas stepped forward onto the platform, Margaret and the boy with him, the clock's gentle rhythm matching their footsteps exactly. They were here, and time, gentle, generous, and shaped entirely by love, welcomed them home. The porches stretched wide and welcoming, each one a quiet invitation to rest and be held. Thomas walked the gentle streets with Margaret's arm linked through his, the boy skipping ahead, then circling back, every house they passed offering its own particular comfort. Rocking chairs moved gently there, no wind touched them, shaped exactly for whoever needed holding that moment. Some held elderly versions of people who'd arrived before him, rocking slowly with eyes closed in perfect contentment, others empty but waiting patiently, cushions shaped to specific memories. The curve of his grandmother's back during long storytelling sessions, the particular slump of his father's shoulders after a good day's work. The porches themselves glowed with gentle light, from lanterns that floated at perfect height for reading or conversation, or simply watching twilight deepen without end. Flowers bloomed in window boxes and along rails, colors that shifted to match whatever mood needed soothing. Soft blues for old sorrows dissolving, warm ambers for shared joy, gentle roses for love that had waited patiently. Thomas paused at one porch that felt particularly familiar, the exact shape of the one he and Margaret had dreamed of adding to their earthly home, but never quite managed. The swing was wide enough for 3 generations, cushions plump with the particular comfort of ordinary evenings spent watching fireflies or listening to crickets, or simply being together without need for words. The boy ran ahead and climbed onto it immediately, teddy bear tucked beside him, setting it rocking with the particular energy of childhood joy. The swing responded perfectly, gentle arcs that matched his excitement without ever tipping, chains singing softly the lullaby Margaret had made up for Lily decades ago. Margaret's hand tightened in Thomas's. "That one's ours," she said softly, nodding toward the house at the end of the street. But first they lingered on this porch, drawn by its particular welcome. A rocking chair adjusted itself to Thomas's exact height. Another, shaped for Margaret, appeared beside it. They sat without hurry, the boys swinging contentedly between them. The porch boards were warm beneath their feet, smelling of cedar and every good summer evening ever spent watching stars appear. The railing held faint impressions of hands that had rested there across lifetimes, his father's calluses, Margaret's gentle grip during thunderstorms, Lily's small fingers sticky with popsicle. The rocking chairs moved in perfect rhythm, holding them through the quiet wonder of arrival. The swing carried the boy in gentle arcs, his laughter bright as the fireflies beginning to gather. Twilight deepened without darkening, light shifting to the particular amber of perfect rest. The porch held them all, past, present, and eternal now, in gentle embrace. They were home, and every porch in the town was waiting to rock them gently into whatever ordinary miracles came next. The smell of fresh-baked bread drifted through the twilight air like the gentlest invitation, wrapping around Thomas with the particular warmth of every kitchen that had ever meant home. It wasn't just bread. It was his mother's loaves rising on Sunday mornings while hymns played softly on the radio. Margaret's experimental rolls that sometimes came out perfect and sometimes not, but were always eaten with gratitude. The simple biscuits Lily had learned to make at his knee, flour on her small nose and pride in her eyes when they rose golden. The scent grew stronger as they walked the gentle streets, drawing them forward without hurry. It carried layers, yeast and butter, and the faint sweetness of vanilla from sugar cookies shaped like stars for Christmas, the hearty warmth of cornbread alongside chili on cold nights, the particular comfort of toast buttered thick when someone was sick and needed easy nourishment. Thomas breathed it in deeply, feeling his chest expand with memories that no longer carried weight, only joy. The bread smell held the quiet persistence of love expressed in ordinary feeding. Hands that baked through tired evenings, loaves shared with neighbors during hard times, the way a warm slice could say, "I love you," when words felt too big. The boys skipped ahead, teddy bear swinging, nose wrinkling with delight. "Grandma's baking," he announced, with the certainty of childhood senses that never doubted good things. Margaret's hand tightened in Thomas's. "She started as soon as she knew you were coming," she said softly, eyes shining with the particular joy of family traditions made eternal. The smell led them past houses where other doors stood open, bread scents mingling with specific memories, cinnamon rolls from the neighbour who'd brought them after Margaret's mother died, zucchini bread from the garden, surplus shared freely. The simple white loaves his own mother had taught him to shape with hands that trembled slightly from age but never lost their certainty. Each house released its own variation, rye with caraway from his father's heritage, sweet Hawaiian rolls from vacations with Lily, crusty baguettes from the year they'd tried to recreate Paris in their kitchen and ended up laughing over slightly charred results. The scents wove together into a symphony of abundance, speaking of lean times made rich by sharing, celebrations marked with something homemade, ordinary days made sacred by the quiet act of feeding those you love. Thomas felt tears rise that tasted of salt and yeast and gratitude. The bread smell carried him through every kitchen he'd ever known, completing circles of nourishment that had stretched across lifetimes. They reached their own porch, where the scent was strongest, warm and immediate, promising something just pulled from the oven. The swing rocked gently in welcome, as if keeping time with rising dough. Inside, the kitchen light glowed golden, and the smell wrapped around them completely. They were home, and fresh-baked bread, love's quiet persistence made edible, was waiting to be shared. The neighbours began to appear as gentle as twilight itself, materializing on porches and paths with the unhurried grace of people who had all the time in creation to welcome someone home. They weren't strangers. Each face carried the particular warmth of lives that had brushed his in meaningful ways, connections revealed now in their full depth. First came Mrs. Henderson from down the street on Earth, the one who'd brought casseroles during Margaret's illness and sat with Thomas on hard days when words failed. She stood on her porch that looked exactly like her earthly one, only brighter, waving with the same gentle hand that had once pressed a plate of cookies into his during grief. "Thomas," she called softly, voice carrying the particular comfort of shared, ordinary miracles. "We've been keeping an eye out." More followed. Mr. Alvarez, who'd fixed their car that rainy night and refused payment with a gruff, "Neighbours help neighbours," the young couple from across the street who'd borrowed tools and returned them cleaned with thank-you notes, the children, now ageless, who'd trick-or-treated at their door every year with shining eyes and careful manners. They waved from porches that rocked gently, from garden gates blooming with flowers that released specific memories. The roses Mrs. Henderson had shared starts from, the tomatoes Mr. Alvarez had taught Thomas to stake properly, the marigolds the children had planted along fences in messy but earnest rows. No one hurried over, no one needed to. The waving was connection enough, the quiet acknowledgement of lives intertwined through small kindnesses that had mattered more than anyone knew at the time. Thomas lifted his hand in return, feeling each wave settle warm in his chest. The neighbours' porches glowed brighter in response, lanterns floating higher, as if celebrating reunion. The boy ran ahead to wave back with both arms, teddy bear dangling forgotten. The neighbours laughed, the particular joy of adults watching childhood enthusiasm that needs no restraint here. Margaret's fingers intertwined more firmly with his. "They've all been waiting too," she said softly. "Love doesn't just connect us to family, it makes neighbours eternal." The waving continued as they walked, gentle, unhurried, complete. Each gesture carried gratitude for shared earthly moments. Snow shoveled without asking, tools lent freely, quiet presence during hard times. Thomas felt the circle expand to include them all. The particular warmth of community made eternal, separation dissolved into gentle waving. Across twilight streets they were home, and every neighbour, known and newly known, was part of the welcome, waving from porches that had been waiting to rock them gently into whatever ordinary miracles came next. The park bench appeared exactly where memory said it should, under the old oak that had shaded their earthly park, only here the tree was fuller, leaves shimmering with twilight colors that shifted gently with every breeze. Thomas recognized it immediately. The bench where he'd sat with newborn Lily sleeping in his arms while Margaret rested nearby. The one where he'd taught his granddaughter to read her first words. The place he and Margaret had gone on quiet evenings when the house felt too full of worry, and they needed simple presence. The boy ran ahead and climbed onto it immediately, Teddy Bear propped beside him like an old friend. The bench adjusted perfectly, higher for small legs to swing freely, smooth where earthly wood had splintered, warm with the particular comfort of ordinary days, spent watching clouds or children play. Thomas and Margaret settled on either side of the boy, the bench expanding without creaking to hold them all. It felt solid and giving, shaped by every moment of rest ever taken here, the weight of new fathers marveling at tiny fingers, the quiet slump of grandparents watching grandchildren discover the world, the gentle lean of couples holding hands through every season. The oak above them rustled softly, leaves releasing scents of specific memories, cut grass from park picnics, sunscreen from summer days with Lily, the particular warmth of autumn afternoons when leaves fell like gentle confetti. The boy swung his legs, Teddy Bear resting contentedly. "This is where we waited," he said simply, voice bright with childhood certainty. Thomas felt Margaret's hand find his across the bench back, fingers intertwining with the ease of forever. The wood beneath them warmed further, remembering every shared silence, every quiet conversation, every moment when words weren't needed because presence spoke clearly. They sat in the kind of silence that holds everything, the joy of ordinary days made eternal, the gentle completion of circles begun lifetimes ago. The bench rocked them slightly, though no one moved, matching the rhythm of hearts that had learned to rest together. In the distance, other benches held similar gatherings, parents with children who'd arrived young, grown to every missed age, couples holding hands across decades, friends sharing quiet laughter that needed no volume here. The park itself stretched gentle and intimate, paths curving toward private wonders and always back to shared spaces, grass growing exactly high enough for perfect games of tag, or lying back to watch clouds that arranged themselves into beloved faces. The oak's leaves shifted to spell out quiet truths in twilight light. You were always heading here. Every ordinary moment mattered. Love's quiet persistence built this place. When they finally rose, the bench remained warm for whoever needed its particular comfort next. The boy tucked Teddy Bear under one arm and took their hands, completing the circle in small, perfect ways. They walked on toward home, the bench rocking gently behind them in farewell that needed no sadness. They were here. And every park bench in the town waited patiently to hold whoever needed the particular comfort of ordinary rest made eternal. The swings hung from nothing visible, strong, gentle chains that rose into twilight sky and held firm with the particular certainty of childhood faith. Thomas watched the boy run ahead and climb onto one immediately, small hands gripping chains that adjusted perfectly to his height, seat shaping itself to hold him securely. The swing began to move with the gentlest push from an unseen breeze, higher than earthly swings ever went, yet with perfect safety. The boy's laughter rose bright and clear, the particular joy of childhood, discovering that some things here worked better than physics ever allowed. Thomas felt Margaret's hand slip into his as they approached the empty swings beside the boys. The chains shimmered faintly, inviting without pressure. He hadn't swung in decades, not since pushing Lily and then her children, but the invitation felt as natural as breathing. They sat together, Thomas on one, Margaret on another, the boy between them swinging higher with delighted whoops. The swings responded to their weight perfectly, seats warming to match memories. The particular curve of park swings from his own childhood, the gentle give of the tire swing he'd hung for Lily, the sturdy comfort of playgrounds visited with grandchildren. The motion began slowly, gentle arcs that matched the rhythm of hearts learning to play again. Higher they went, wind-lifting hair that was now thick and youthful, carrying scents of every perfect swing day, cut grass and sunscreen, autumn leaves and hot chocolate waiting afterward, summer evenings when swings were the last stop before bedtime. Thomas felt laughter rise unbidden, the deep, genuine kind that started in the belly and burst free. The swing carried him higher, the particular joy of weightlessness that childhood understands instinctively and adulthood forgets until reminded. Margaret's laughter joined his, bright as the day they'd first met. Her swing moved in perfect synchrony, close enough that their feet nearly touched at the top of each arc. The boy whooped between them, teddy bear clutched tight, joy radiating in waves that made the very air shimmer. The swings went higher than physics should allow, up into twilight that held them gently, sky opening to reveal stars that arranged themselves into playground shapes. Slides made of light, jungle gyms of constellations, merry-go-rounds spinning slowly with familiar faces waving from seats. No fear came with the height, only perfect trust. The chains held firm with love's quiet strength. The seats cradled them with the particular comfort of being completely safe to play again. They swung through memories made visible, childhood afternoons when swings were rockets to the moon, young parent days pushing Lily higher while she begged again, grandfather years giving the gentlest underdogs to grandchildren who squealed with delight. The motion healed without trying, dissolving adult caution, reawakening simple joy, completing circles of play that earthly life had cut short by time and responsibility. When they finally slowed, swings settling into gentle rocks, the boy leaned over to hug them both mid-arc. The chains adjusted perfectly, holding them in mid-air embrace. Thomas felt Margaret's hand find his across the space between swings, fingers intertwining with the ease of forever. The twilight wrapped them in perfect contentment. They were home. And the swings, gentle, generous and eternal, waited to carry whoever needed the particular joy of going higher than they ever had before. The ice cream never melted, no matter how slowly they ate or how long they lingered. Thomas watched the boy accept a cone from a stand that appeared gently at the park's edge. 3 scoops towering impossibly, chocolate for comfort, strawberry for joy, vanilla for the simple sweetness of ordinary days. The cone didn't drip. The ice cream held its perfect shape, cool but not cold enough to shock, tasting richer with every lick. The boy took a bite, and his eyes widened with pure wonder. The particular delight of childhood discovering that some things here worked exactly as wished for. Thomas felt Margaret's hand slip into his as cones appeared for them too, his with mint chip that tasted of the rare treats his father had brought home on payday, hers with butter pecan that carried the exact flavor of celebrations shared across decades. They sat on the park bench that had followed them here, cones in hand, watching the boy alternate between licks and swings that never tired him. The ice cream tasted of specific memories, the drugstore counter where he'd taken Margaret on their first date, sharing a single sundae with 2 spoons because money was tight, but love was rich. The homemade batches churned on the porch with Lily turning the crank until her arms ached, and her smile never did. The quiet pints shared with Margaret in hospital rooms when small sweetness was the only thing that helped. Each flavour bloomed deeper with every taste, chocolate carrying the particular comfort of childhood rewards, strawberry bright as Lily's laughter, vanilla pure as the quiet joy of ordinary evenings together. The ice cream responded to their thoughts, shifting slightly to include flavors they'd loved but forgotten. The black raspberry from vacations up north, the peach from fruit picked fresh with grandchildren, the coffee that had been Margaret's favorite for late-night talks. No brain freeze came, no sticky fingers, no sadness when the cone ended. It simply refilled gently if more was wanted, or dissolved into light that settled warm in the chest when enough was enough. They ate slowly, sharing bites, the way they'd shared everything. Thomas offering Margaret the perfect swirl of mint and chip, her feeding him a taste of butter pecan that carried 47 years of ordinary anniversaries. The boy returned between swings for more licks, face smudged with joy rather than mess. The ice cream stand adjusted its flavors to whatever his heart needed next. Bubblegum for pure fun, cookie dough for the particular delight of things not quite baked. The park around them glowed brighter with their shared sweetness, fireflies dancing in patterns that spelled out gratitude for ordinary treats made eternal. Thomas felt the last earthly hunger dissolve, not for food, but for moments of simple pleasure that time had cut short. The ice cream tasted of that now, perfect abundance, love's quiet expression in small, shared sweetness. When they finally set the cones aside, full without heaviness, satisfied without end, the stand dissolved gently into light that joined the floating lanterns above. They rose lighter, carrying the taste of joy that never melted, never ended. The swings waited for another turn, the park paths curved toward home. They were here. And ice cream, gentle, generous, and eternal, would always taste like joy when someone needed its particular comfort next. The tree house waited at the edge of the park like a childhood dream, made solid and eternal, bigger than the one Thomas's father had built in their backyard when he was 9, yet carrying the exact scent of fresh-cut pine and sun-warmed nails. The ladder extended itself gently as they approached, rungs spaced perfectly for small hands and adult feet alike, glowing faintly with the particular warmth of every afternoon spent climbing to secret worlds. The boys scrambled up first, teddy bear tucked under one arm, laughter echoing down like the purest joy. Thomas followed, feeling his body move with the ease of youth, no creaking knees, no hesitation, only the familiar thrill of ascent. Margaret climbed beside him, her hand brushing his occasionally in the way that said, "We're in this together." Always. Inside, the treehouse had expanded beyond earthly limits, walls of living wood that shifted to show scenes from treehouse memories, his own childhood forts built from scrap lumber and imagination, the one he'd hammered together for Lily, with crooked nails and infinite pride, the playhouse where grandchildren had held tea parties with invisible guests. The floor was carpeted in soft moss that felt like the best parts of every backyard, cool and springy, releasing scents of pine needles and earth after rain. A wide window overlooked the twilight town, framing views of swinging porches and glowing windows, but inside, cushions shaped themselves into perfect seating, big enough for family gatherings, soft as clouds from the train seats. The boy dove onto a pile of pillows that appeared just for him, teddy bear propped beside like a sentinel. "This is where we planned adventures," he announced, voice bright with rediscovery. Thomas sat beside him, the treehouse adjusting its light to the golden hour of childhood afternoons. Memories played on the wooden walls, 9-year-old Thomas with his father measuring twice and cutting once, sweat on brows but smiles wider. Lily at 5, helping hammer nails that bent comically, her concentration pure as prayer. Great-grandchildren organizing pirate raids with sticks for swords and boundless imagination. Margaret settled on Thomas's other side, her presence completing the space, The treehouse smelled brighter now, fresh sawdust from new builds, the particular tang of orange cratewood from his father's workbench, wildflowers from bouquets Lily had picked to decorate. No weather intruded, no rain to chase them inside, no dusk to end play. The treehouse held eternal afternoon, games that stretched luxuriously, stories told without bedtime curfew, quiet moments of simply being high above worries. They played, Thomas pushing the boy on a swing that grew from one wall, Margaret joining with songs that made the wood hum in harmony, laughter rising until the very branches rustled in response. The treehouse remembered every imperfection made perfect, bent nails straightened by love, leaky roofs sealed by persistence, lonely afternoons filled with imaginary friends, now real. Thomas felt his heart expand to hold it all. The child who'd dreamed here, the father who'd built here, the grandfather who'd played here, all one in this eternal now. They lingered until contentment settled deep, the treehouse glowing brighter, as if pleased with their visit. When they climbed down, the ladder folded itself gently, ready for whoever needed childhood heights next. They were home, and the treehouse, gentle, generous, and brighter than memory, waited to hold every adventure ever dreamed. Fireflies began to gather as twilight deepened without darkening, drifting from the meadows like living lanterns carrying messages only the heart could read. Thomas watched them rise in slow spirals, each one pulsing with soft golden light that spelled his name in elegant cursive before dissolving into warmth that settled on his skin. The boy chased a few with delighted whoops, teddy bear forgotten on the grass, small hands passing harmlessly through the glowing bodies that responded by circling him protectively. Margaret linked her arm through Thomas's, her smile radiant in the firefly glow. "They've been practicing," she whispered. The fireflies weren't random insects. They were memories made luminous, each carrying a specific moment. One swarm formed the shape of his childhood backyard, where he'd caught the first in a jar and released it with whispered apology. Another spelled Lily's name in winking lights, remembering summer evenings when they'd filled mason jars only to set them free at bedtime. They danced in patterns that told stories, the slow swirl of his and Margaret's first picnic under stars that felt this close, the joyful loops of Lily's wedding day laughter, the gentle pulses of hospital nights when fireflies outside the window had been their only entertainment. Thomas extended a hand and fireflies landed softly on his palm, not burning but warming like candle flames made safe. Each one released a tiny scene, his father teaching him constellations with stories older than maps, Margaret's hand in his during quiet walks home from church, Lily's first "I love you, Grandpa," whispered after a scraped knee. The fireflies spelled larger messages across the park sky. You were always loved. Every ordinary day mattered. Welcome home. The boy returned breathless, fireflies orbiting his head like a crown. "They know us," he said simply, wonder pure as his younger self. Margaret laughed, fireflies weaving through her hair like living jewels. "They've been waiting to light your way." The twilight town responded, porches glowing brighter, lanterns bobbing higher, streets curving invitingly as fireflies led the path home. No jars needed here. The fireflies were free and eternal, spelling gratitude for every jar released, every whispered apology, every childhood evening spent watching them dance. Thomas felt the light soak into his skin, completing circles of wonder begun lifetimes ago. They walked on, fireflies escorting gently, their slow golden letters lingering in the air. Thomas, Margaret, family, they were home, and fireflies, gentle, generous, and spelling love in every language, waited to light whoever needed their particular glow next. The river appeared at the park's far edge, not rushing but flowing with the gentle certainty of water that knows exactly where home is. Thomas heard it first, the soft murmur carrying every sound of water he'd ever loved, the babble of creeks behind childhood fishing spots, the lap of lake waves on summer docks, the quiet hush of rain on pond surfaces during family picnics. They approached hand in hand, the boys splashing bare feet in shallows that felt like warm silk. The river reflected twilight skies, holding every happy memory, surfaces shimmering with scenes, his father's line casting perfectly on dawn creeks, Margaret skipping stones with competitive joy on their honeymoon, Lily's first catch, a tiny bluegill released with squeals of delight. The water wasn't cold, it welcomed, wrapping around ankles with the particular comfort of every perfect water day. Fish leaped in joyful arcs, scales flashing specific moments, sunfish from boyhood streams, trout from father-son trips. The goldfish Lily had won at a fair and carried home in a bag that never spilled. Thomas knelt at the edge, trailing fingers through current that showed his reflection, not aged or ill, but every age at once, all held in love's gentle embrace. The river responded by parting to reveal submerged treasures, smooth stones engraved with names of loved ones waiting ahead, shells holding whispers of ordinary miracles, sunken toys from childhood games washed clean and whole. Margaret joined him, her reflection merging seamlessly with his, the particular harmony of lives intertwined. The boy dove in fully, swimming with strokes that carried no effort, Teddy Bear floating beside like loyal companion. The river held every happy memory reflected perfectly. Baptisms in family creeks, baptisms of laughter during water fights, the quiet baptisms of presence during hard days when water soothed without words. No currents pulled dangerously. The river served joy, widening for swimming, shallowing for wading, mirroring exactly what the heart needed to see. They swam together, water lifting them weightless, reflections showing family gatherings across time, grandparents teaching skips, parents holding toddlers at edges, grandchildren splashing without end. The river murmured truths in liquid voice. You were never separate from love's flow. Every moment mattered. Welcome home. Fish formed shapes in leaps, arrows pointing homeward, hearts pulsing with shared joy, words spelling gratitude in bubbles that rose golden. Thomas floated on his back, Margaret's hand finding his underwater, the boy diving for treasures that appeared just for him. Shiny stones, perfect shells, memories made tangible. The river carried them gently downstream toward town lights, current matching heartbeat rhythm. They emerged dripping light rather than water, warmer and lighter. The river flowed on, reflecting whoever needed its particular mirror next, gentle, generous, eternal. They were home, and every happy memory reflected their waited to shine for the next heart seeking its peaceful flow. The bridges arched gracefully over the river, not imposing, but inviting, made of laughter crystallized into gentle curves, and second chances shaped into sturdy rails. Thomas crossed the first with Margaret's arm linked through his, the boy skipping ahead to test each plank with delighted thumps. The surface wasn't wood or stone, but something warm and resonant, vibrating softly with every chuckle and gasp of relief ever crossed in life. The bridge over childhood creeks jumped with friends daring each other higher, the covered bridge where he'd first kissed Margaret during a rainstorm that felt like blessing, the metaphorical spans over hard times held together by love's quiet persistence. Each step released faint echoes, laughter from family reunions where bridges led to picnics, sighs of second chances after arguments mended with apologies and pie, the particular joy of grandchildren racing across monster bridges with grandfatherly underdogs. The rails glowed with embedded light, scenes playing softly, Margaret forgiving his forgotten anniversary with a smile that bridged hurt to healing. Lily crossing her first big kid bridge with his hand steady in hers. His parents bridging generations with stories told over creekside campfires. No wobble threatened safety. The bridges held firm with love's strength, wide enough for family processions, arched high for views of twilight town glowing welcoming. The boy paused midway, leaning over rails to watch fish leap in patterns spelling his name. "This one's for adventures," he declared, jumping lightly to make it sing. Thomas laughed, the sound echoing back amplified with every shared joy. Margaret hummed the bridge song from their honeymoon, the silly tune they'd made up to conquer creaky spans, rails shimmering in response. They crossed multiple bridges, each one a specific second chance, the one over Grief's River where forgiveness flowed freely, the span connecting past hurts to present peace, the grand arch leading directly homeward. The bridges murmured truths in resonant hum, every crossing built you stronger. Love was always the surest span, you're safe now forever. Views from Midway showed the town in perfect miniature, porches rocking, lanterns floating, rivers reflecting happy memories endlessly. No tolls demanded. The bridges gave freely, space for quiet reflection, room for exuberant play, rails for hands needing steadying. Thomas felt every earthly bridge crossed, literal and figurative, complete itself here. Hospital corridors bridged by hope, years apart spanned by persistent love, ordinary days connected into lives rich beyond measure. They reached the far bank lighter, laughter lingering in the air like firefly trails. The final bridge arched homeward, rails glowing brighter in anticipation. They were here. And every bridge, gentle, generous, made of laughter and second chances, waited to carry whoever needed its particular span next. The cafe appeared at the corner where the park met the quiet street leading home, its windows glowing with the particular warmth of places where conversations never have to end. Thomas paused at the open door, drawn by the scent of coffee that knew exactly how he liked it, strong with a touch of cream, the way Margaret had made it every morning for 47 years. Inside, tables were set for conversations always wanted but never quite had time for. Small round ones for intimate truths, long communal ones for shared stories, cozy booths for quiet confessions. Chairs adjusted themselves as they entered, one shaped for Thomas's height with the particular curve of his favourite armchair, another for Margaret with cushions that remembered her preference for extra back support, a booster that grew gently for the boy who climbed up, with teddy bear in tow. The coffee arrived before they ordered, steaming in mugs painted with scenes from their life, their first tiny apartment's chipped set, the good china used for anniversaries, the plastic travel mugs from road trips with Lily. Thomas lifted his and breathed in the aroma. Rich dark roast from mornings when work waited, but love came first. Gentle breakfast blends from lazy Saturdays, the particular strength Margaret brewed during his illness when every sip was a small victory. The first taste bloomed across his tongue like sunrise, coffee from the morning he'd proposed over diner refills that never emptied, from quiet hospital dawns when it was the only normal thing left, from ordinary Tuesdays when Margaret's smile over the rim of her mug had been enough to carry him through any day. Margaret's eyes met his over her cup, shining with the particular joy of conversations no longer rushed. The cafe adjusted its light to perfect intimacy, soft glow from lamps that floated gently, candles that never burned down, twilight filtering through windows that showed whatever view comforted most. Their earthly kitchen table on Sunday mornings, the porch where they'd shared coffee watching grandchildren play, the quiet corner booth from their first date. They talked without hurry, of dreams deferred by earthly responsibilities now ready to explore, of quiet gratitudes for ordinary days that had added up to extraordinary love, of small moments they'd wished to linger in longer, the way dawnlight fell across the kitchen when Lily was small, the particular warmth of shared silence after hard conversations that ended in understanding. The boys sipped hot chocolate that tasted of every Christmas morning, marshmallows shaped like stars that dissolved into sweetness, carrying his grandmother's hugs. He listened wide-eyed as they spoke of adult truths made gentle here. The fears they'd carried silently, the love that had persisted anyway, the quiet pride of watching each other grow through every season. The cafe held them perfectly, conversation stretching luxuriously, coffee refilling itself with whatever flavor the moment needed. Strong for truths that required courage, sweet for memories that healed, gentle for quiet gratitudes, finally spoken aloud. When they finally rose, mugs empty but hearts full, the cafe dimmed its lights considerately, ready for whoever needed its particular comfort next. They stepped out lighter, carrying the taste of conversations completed in perfect time. The town waited ahead, lights glowing warmer in welcome. They were home, and coffee, gentle, generous, and knowing exactly how you like it, waited to fuel whatever conversations came next. The library carriage joined the train, sometimes appearing gently between regular carriages like a thought that needed space to unfold. Thomas discovered it one endless twilight when the quiet call of books drew him through a door that hadn't been there moments before. Inside stretched shelves that reached higher than sight, yet every volume was perfectly accessible, ladders gliding silently to exactly the right height, chairs shaping themselves for perfect reading posture. The air smelled of vanilla pages and lemon polish, and the particular comfort of rainy afternoons spent lost in stories. Books here weren't limited by earthly publishing. Every story ever imagined existed, including the ones family members had carried in their hearts, but never written. Thomas trailed fingers along spines that hummed softly under his touch, responding to his mood, adventure for days when wonder called, gentle memoirs for quiet reflection, children's books that grew illustrations as you read. He pulled one volume bound in soft blue leather, his name embossed in gold that caught the carriage light. Inside were stories he'd told but never recorded, the bedtime tales for Lily about brave squirrels and kind dragons, the quiet encouragements whispered to Margaret during hard times, the jokes shared with his father over fishing lines that became family legend. Another shelf held Margaret's books, her private journals of love notes never sent, recipes annotated with memories of specific meals, poetry written in margins of cookbooks during quiet moments. The boy found a section of picture books that moved when opened, pages coming alive with scenes of his own childhood adventures, building forts with Thomas, baking with Margaret, discovering the world with wide-eyed wonder. They read together in chairs that arranged themselves into perfect family grouping, voices overlapping in gentle narration. The library responded, pages turning at the speed of listening hearts, illustrations shifting to include details only they would recognize, words adjusting to heal specific sorrows left unexplored on earth. Thomas found volumes of what-ifs gently resolved, paths not taken revealed, as right choices after all, moments of pain transformed into deeper love, ordinary days shown in their full, sacred depth. No book ever ended sadly here. Stories completed themselves with perfect grace, loose threads woven into tapestries of connection. When tears came, happy ones that needed no wiping, they fell upward into light that settled warm in the chest. The carriage rocked them gently through reading, train motion matching page-turning rhythm. Outside, twilight fields bloomed with flowers shaped like open books, releasing fragrance of specific stories loved best. They read until contentment settled deep, books closing themselves gently when hearts felt full. The library carriage dissolved as seamlessly as it had appeared, leaving them in the regular carriage carrying the warmth of stories completed. Thomas held Margaret's hand, the boy's head heavy on his shoulder, in perfect rest. They were home, and books, gentle, generous, and opening to exactly the pages needed, waited for whoever needed their particular comfort next. The garden carriage bloomed into existence with the scent of earth after rain, and every flower ever loved. Thomas stepped through the door that appeared gently, Margaret and the boy following, drawn by fragrance that carried specific memories. Lilacs from his mother's garden, roses Margaret had tended through every season, wildflowers Lily had picked in fistfuls for makeshift bouquets. Inside, the carriage had become a vast greenhouse bathed in twilight light that shifted to match whatever growth was needed. Paths curved through beds that grew flowers blooming in colors unique to this place, hues that tasted of gratitude, smelled of forgiveness, felt like homecoming. Plants responded to their presence, roses opening wider at Margaret's touch, releasing scent of their wedding day, sunflowers turning toward Thomas with faces that held Lily's childhood grin, forget-me-nots blooming in patterns that spelled out names of loved ones waiting ahead. The boy ran ahead to a section of children's gardens, plants that grew into swings and slides, vegetables popping from soil ready to eat with perfect sweetness, flowers releasing bubbles of light for chasing. Thomas and Margaret walked slowly, hands linked, the garden adjusting paths to exactly the pace love needed. Flowers bloomed at their feet, carrying specific memories. Daisies from fields where they'd picnicked as newlyweds, tulips from the bed Margaret had planted the year Lily started school, marigolds from window boxes that had brightened hard times. They tended gently, though no tending was truly needed, hands sinking into soil that sang with growth. The earth remembered every garden ever loved, his mother's victory plot during lean years, Margaret's rose beds that bloomed brighter after rain, the small pots Lily had grown herbs in on apartment windowsills. New plants appeared for healing, flowers that released fragrance of specific apologies accepted, vines climbing toward light, carrying photographs of missed moments now complete, trees whose fruit tasted of abundance, once worried over but always provided. The garden carriage held every season at once, spring bulbs pushing through autumn leaves, summer blooms in winter light, all in perfect harmony. Butterflies with wings painted from family photos drifted lazily, landing on shoulders to share quiet messages of love persisting. Thomas felt the garden heal without effort, old regrets over time not spent tending, dissolving into soil that transformed them into beauty, gratitude for ordinary days of dirty hands and fresh vegetables blooming brighter. They harvested gently, flowers that stayed fresh forever, fruit that tasted of specific shared meals, herbs releasing scents of kitchens where love had been the main ingredient. When they stepped back, arms full of impossible abundance, the garden carriage glowed with completed growth, ready for whoever needed its particular tending next. They carried their harvest toward the kitchen carriage that waited ahead, fragrance trailing like blessing. The train rocked them gently on. They were home, and flowers blooming in colors only love could name waited to fill whatever space needed their particular beauty next. The music carriage joined with a gentle chord that felt like coming home to a house where someone is already playing your favorite song. Thomas stepped through the door that appeared softly, Margaret and the boy following, drawn by melodies that carried every note of love ever made audible. Inside, instruments waited on stands that adjusted perfectly, violins remembering lullabies, pianos holding love songs, guitars strung with strings that vibrated to specific heartbeats. The walls were made of living sound, notes from previous playing hanging gently in the air like colourful mobiles. Clara was already there, grown but with the particular joy of childhood music lessons, seated at a harp that grew from the floor like a golden tree. Her fingers moved through melodies that held every song sung to her as a child, every lullaby she'd sung to her own, every quiet humming during ordinary days that had made them sacred. The boy ran to a drum set that appeared just his size, sticks fitting small hands perfectly. He beat out rhythms of pure joy, heartbeat patterns from excited Christmas mornings, the particular thump of running barefoot through summer grass. Thomas picked up a guitar that knew his touch, fingers finding chords that held specific memories. The silly songs for Lily about brushing teeth, the quiet strumming during hospital nights, the love songs written for Margaret, but never quite finished on earth. Margaret joined with a flute that sang with her breath, notes rising visible in the air like gentle birds. They played together without rehearsal, melodies weaving seamlessly, lullabies into love songs, into celebration, hymns into quiet gratitude. The music carriage expanded to hold every instrument needed, sound adjusting perfectly so every note was heard in its fullness. Other family drifted in, his father with harmonica that produced train whistles from childhood trips, his mother with voice rich as rising bread, grandchildren adding percussion with hands and voices and pure delight. The music responded to their hearts, softening for gentle memories, brightening for joyful ones, deepening for truths that needed holding in harmony. Notes rose, visible, golden for love songs, soft blue for lullabies, rose for celebration, forming patterns that told their shared story in light and sound. They played through everything. Wedding marches slowed to savor every step. Children's songs stretched luxuriously, quiet hymns of persistence through hard times. The carriage held them perfectly, no wrong notes, no rush toward ending, only pure expression of lives lived in love made audible. When the music finally settled into quiet chords, the carriage glowed with afterglow. Instruments rested themselves gently, notes dissolving into light that settled warm in every heart. They rose lighter, carrying the music in their bones, whole, held and radiant with shared harmony. The carriage dissolved gently, leaving them in the regular space, carrying its particular warmth. The train rocked them on toward home. They were here, and music, gentle, generous, and eternal, waited to play whatever melody love needed next. Dancing began without announcement, as natural as breathing when joy overflows. The aisles widened into a floor that appeared gently, smooth and springy, adjusting to whatever steps love needed. Polished wood for elegant waltzes, soft grass for barefoot joy, cloud-like give for floating. Thomas found himself moving with Margaret in the familiar rhythm they'd discovered young and perfected across decades, close enough for heartbeats to sync, far enough for hands to hold properly. The music came from everywhere, instruments playing themselves in perfect harmony, voices from other carriages adding gentle counterpoint, the train's own motion providing percussion. They danced through memories made visible, their wedding first dance to a scratchy record in a crowded hall, kitchen slow dances to radio static when dishes waited, quiet sways during hospital nights when movement eased pain. The floor responded, shifting to the gym floor of their first dance, the linoleum of their first apartment, the hospital tile made soft by love. The boy joined with pure childhood abandon, swinging between them in arcs that became part of the dance. Teddy bear tucked safely in Margaret's arms now. Grandchildren appeared, circling with laughter that made the floor glow brighter. The dancing grew to include everyone who belonged, family from every carriage linking hands in circles that expanded without limit, steps adjusting to accommodate every ability and age. They danced through everything, celebratory reels for lives well lived, gentle waltzes for sorrows transformed, joyful jigs for ordinary miracles. The music responded to their hearts, slowing for intimate moments, quickening for shared joy, deepening for truths expressed in movement when words fell short. Thomas spun Margaret gently, her dress flaring in colours that held every outfit she'd ever loved, her laughter bright as their first date. The boy led a conga line of grandchildren that wove through with perfect timing. No one tired. No one stumbled. The floor held them all in perfect grace, adjusting to every need, higher for leaps of joy, softer for gentle steps of those who'd arrived, with earthly limitations now dissolved. The dancing healed without effort, dissolving old regrets in movement, amplifying joy in shared rhythm, completing circles of connection across time. When the music finally settled into quiet sway, they moved together in one great slow dance, thousands linked in perfect harmony, twilight wrapping them in gentle embrace. Thomas held Margaret close, the boy between them, feeling every dance ever shared complete itself here. Wedding dances, kitchen dances, hospital sways, porch swing rocks. The floor glowed with their footsteps, patterns spelling love in every language of movement. They danced until contentment settled deep, the floor dissolving gently back into aisles when rest called. The train rocked them on, carrying the dance's particular joy. They were home. And dancing, gentle, generous, and eternal, waited for whoever needed its particular expression of shared love next. The quiet carriage appeared when the heart needed holding without words, its door opening softly off the main aisle like a gentle invitation to rest. Thomas felt drawn there after the joyful noise of dancing, the quiet call matching his deepening peace. Margaret's hand slipped into his, the boy's small fingers intertwining with theirs, teddy bear tucked safely under one arm. Inside, the space was simple and perfect. Cloud seats arranged in small, intimate circles, walls that absorbed sound yet amplified presence, light dimmed to the particular warmth of candlelit rooms where worries dissolve. No music played, no conversation demanded, only the soft hum of the train and the gentle breathing of loved ones choosing quiet together. They settled into seats that shaped themselves for perfect holding. One large enough for three, cushions molding to hold Thomas's taller frame, Margaret's gentle curves, the boy's small energy now content to rest. The teddy bear nestled between them, button eye catching the soft glow in peaceful rhythm. The quiet wasn't empty. It was full of everything that needed no speaking, the weight of Margaret's head on his shoulder exactly as it had been during long drives home, the boy's trusting weight against his side, like Lily at that age during thunderstorms, the particular comfort of presence that had carried them through every hard thing. Thomas felt earthly worries he hadn't realized lingered dissolve completely. The quiet fear of leaving Margaret alone, the ache of missing Lily's final years, the small regrets of ordinary days when tiredness had shortened patience. The quiet carriage held them gently, absorbing these into warmth that settled deep in his chest. Margaret's fingers traced slow patterns on his hand, circles that had meant, "I'm here through hospital nights. I love you during arguments that ended in making up. I've got you during every uncertainty." The patterns needed no translation now. They simply were, completing circles across decades. The boy sighed contentedly, teddy bear rising and falling with his breathing. His presence completed something vast. The child Thomas had been, the father he'd become, the grandfather who'd held small hands through scraped knees and first heartbreaks. All one in this quiet now. Outside, twilight fields drifted by in slow motion, fireflies hanging suspended like held breath, flowers glowing softly without need to bloom brighter. The quiet carriage gave them all the time needed to simply be, No rush toward next, no clinging to past, only perfect presence. Thomas closed his eyes and felt the quiet deepen into his bones, the particular peace of being completely held without needing to hold anything back. Margaret's breathing matched his, the boy's gentle weight anchoring them all. The carriage held them through this gentle deepening, light shifting to the exact warmth needed for rest without sleep. No one spoke. Words would have been too small. When the quiet felt complete, not ended, but fulfilled, the door opened softly back to the main carriage. They rose lighter, carrying the quiet's particular peace in their bones. The train rocked them on toward home. They were here,
and quiet, gentle, generous, and full of everything words couldn't hold, waited for whoever needed its particular comfort next. The kitchen carriage bloomed into existence with the scent of supper always ready, warm and welcoming, carrying every good meal ever shared. Thomas stepped through the door that appeared gently, Margaret and the boy following, drawn by aromas that wrapped around them like homecoming arms. Inside, the space was perfect. A long farmhouse table that stretched to accommodate whoever felt hungry for connection, chairs shaping themselves to exact comfort, counters glowing with food that appeared as needed, roast chicken crispy and fragrant, mashed potatoes creamy with real butter, green beans snapped fresh from eternal gardens.
the kitchen held every cooking memory made solid, his mother's stove, where bread rose with hymns, Margaret's careful measuring during lean times that still produced abundance, the boy's version of Lily helping stir batters with more enthusiasm than skill. Plates appeared with exactly what the heart was hungry for. Thomas's plate held meatloaf like his mother's Sunday best, with the particular tang of her secret sauce. Margaret's featured her own chicken soup that had healed countless colds. The boys overflowed with macaroni and cheese shaped like dinosaurs, the special treat for good report cards. They sat in places that had always been theirs, the table adjusting perfectly, no one at the head because everyone belonged at the center. Food tasted richer with every bite. Flavors carrying specific memories of shared meals, the Thanksgiving when everything burned but laughter saved the day, the quiet soups during illnesses when presence nourished more than food, the celebratory cakes with candles that never quite stood straight. The kitchen responded to their joy, pots simmering with whatever comforted next, bread rising in the oven with the particular scent of ordinary evenings made sacred, pie cooling on the windowsill with steam that spelled out gratitude in mid-air. They ate slowly, passing dishes that never emptied, sharing bites the way love shares everything. Thomas feeding Margaret a taste of his mother's meatloaf that carried childhood comfort, her offering him soup that tasted of every time she'd cared for him through hard seasons. The boy accepting seconds with the particular delight of children who know they are cherished beyond measure. Conversation rose gently around bites, stories of kitchen disasters turned triumphs, quiet gratitudes for meals shared during lean times, laughter over Lily's childhood experiments that sometimes worked and always taught love. The kitchen held them perfectly, warm light from lamps that floated gently, windows showing views of twilight gardens where ingredients grew eternally fresh, the gentle hum of contentment that comes when hunger for food and connection is perfectly met. When plates finally cleared themselves, sliding gently to a sink that washed without effort, the kitchen settled into quiet satisfaction, ready for dessert or conversation, or whatever love needed next. They rose lighter, carrying the taste of supper, always ready. The train rocked them on toward home. They were here, and supper, gentle, generous, and tasting of every shared meal, waited for whoever felt hungry. for its particular comfort next. The porch carriage appeared with the particular comfort of evenings when the day's work is done and rest feels earned. Thomas stepped through the door that opened gently. Margaret and the boy following, drawn by the soft creak of rocking chairs and the scent of sweet tea cooling on a side table. The space was perfect, a wide wraparound porch that stretched to accommodate every rocking chair and swing ever loved, rails glowing faintly with lantern light, floorboards warm and resonant with every footstep of welcome. Chairs appeared as needed, Thomas's shaped exactly like the one he'd rocked Lily to sleep in, Margaret's with cushions that held the particular softness of her mother's porch, a small one for the boy that rocked itself gently when he climbed in with Teddy Bear. Sweet tea waited in glasses that never grew warm, tasting of every perfect evening shared. The particular tang of Margaret's recipe with extra lemon on hot nights, the gentle sweetness of his mother's, served with porch swing conversations, the minted version Lily had loved during summer visits. They settled into chairs that began rocking in perfect rhythm, no push needed, only the gentle motion of love's quiet persistence. The porch overlooked twilight town and meadow merged seamlessly, gardens blooming brighter in response to their rest, fireflies gathering in patterns that spelled out endearments, distant porches glowing with other family gatherings. Thomas sipped his tea, feeling it settle warm in his chest, the particular comfort of evenings when worries dissolved into cricket song and shared silence. Margaret's chair rocked beside his, close enough for knees to touch, her hand finding his across the armrests with familiar ease. The boy swung gently between them, Teddy Bear resting contentedly, legs kicking in perfect contentment. His chair adjusted to match their rhythm, completing the gentle symphony of rocking that needed no words. The porch held every memory of such evenings, newlyweds poor but rich in time watching stars appear, young parents rocking fussy babies under summer moons, grandparents sharing quiet pride as grandchildren played in yards below, sunsets stretched luxuriously here, colors deepening without darkening, painting the sky in hues that tasted of gratitude, rose for love's persistence, amber for ordinary days made sacred, indigo for peace that passed understanding. They rocked through deepening twilight, tea glasses refilling themselves with whatever flavor the moment needed, stronger for truths quietly shared, sweeter for memories savored slowly, gentler for simple presence. Conversation rose when needed, soft voices carrying stories of porch evenings across lifetimes, or settled into silence rich as the twilight itself. The porch carriage held them perfectly, warm boards remembering every footfall of love, rails steady for hands needing holding, chairs rocking in rhythm with hearts finally at rest. When contentment settled deep, the carriage dissolved gently, leaving them on their own porch that had been waiting all along. The swing rocked in welcome, tea glasses appearing fresh. They were home, and porches, gentle, generous, with rocking chairs and sweet tea, waited for whoever needed their particular comfort next. Twilight deepened without darkening, light shifting to colors that held every perfect ending that was only beginning. Thomas watched from the porch swing with Margaret's head on his shoulder, the boy asleep between them with Teddy Bear clutched close, breathing steady in perfect trust. The sky wasn't fading, it was transforming, layers of rose and amber and indigo deepening into richness that felt like love made visible. Stars appeared not one by one, but in gentle waves, each one carrying a specific memory. The night sky over their first apartment, where they'd counted constellations and dreamed big dreams on small budgets, the particular arrangement visible the evening Lily was born, the quiet canopy during hospital nights when stars outside windows had been their only constant. The twilight held them in perfect balance, no rush toward night, No pullback today, only this eternal in-between where everything difficult dissolved and only love remained. It tasted of warm milk before bed, smelled of sheets dried on the line, felt like the moment just before sleep when worries loosen their grip completely. Fireflies gathered below the porch, rising in slow spirals that spelled out quiet truths. You were always heading here. Every ordinary day mattered. Love's gentle persistence built this place. The swing rocked them through the deepening colors, cushions adjusting to hold the boy's sleeping weight perfectly. Margaret's head fitting exactly in the curve of Thomas's shoulder, as it always had. The town below glowed warmer in response, every porch light brightening gently, windows spilling golden warmth that felt like invitation without pressure. Distant voices drifted on the air, soft laughter from gatherings that needed no hurry, quiet songs from porches where family rocked in perfect contentment. Thomas felt Margaret's fingers intertwine with his across the boy's sleeping form, her breathing syncing with his in rhythm learned across decades of shared nights. The twilight wrapped them in particular tenderness, colors shifting to match memories of perfect evenings, the rose of their honeymoon sunset, the amber of quiet anniversaries, the indigo of nights when stars had felt close enough to touch. No darkness threatened. The twilight simply deepened into richness that invited rest without demanding it, light transforming rather than diminishing. They rocked through it slowly, the swing's gentle motion matching the greater rhythm of this place where endings were only deeper beginnings. The boy sighed in his sleep, teddy bear rising and falling gently. Dreams held safe in twilight that knew how to cradle childhood wonder. Thomas pressed a kiss to Margaret's hair that smelled of lavender and every good night ever shared. She turned slightly to smile up at him, the particular smile that had carried him through every season. The twilight held them perfectly, warm, weightless, eternal. They were home. And twilight, gentle, generous, and deepening into the sweetest peace, waited to hold whoever needed its particular comfort next. The path from the station curved gently toward the house that had been waiting all along, paved with the particular warmth of every way home ever walked. Thomas stepped onto it with Margaret's arm linked through his, the boy skipping ahead, then circling back, teddy bear swinging like a joyful pendulum. The surface wasn't stone or brick, but something alive and welcoming, glowing softly with embedded light that pulsed gently underfoot, matching the rhythm of hearts finally at rest. Each step released faint scents, the gravel crunch of his childhood driveway after school, the soft grass of the path to their first apartment, the particular warmth of the flagstones Margaret had laid herself the year Lily started walking. The path curved without hurry, lined with trees whose leaves shimmered in twilight colors, deep rose for love's persistence, warm amber for ordinary days made sacred, gentle indigo for peace that passed understanding. Fireflies drifted alongside like living lanterns, spelling out quiet welcomes in cursive light. Thomas, Margaret, home. The boy ran ahead to touch familiar markers, the exact spot where he'd learned to ride a bike with Thomas running alongside, the tree that had held Lily's tire swing, the garden gate Margaret had painted fresh every spring, the path remembered every journey home, weary steps after long workdays met with porch lights left on, joyful runs when good news couldn't wait, quiet walks hand in hand when words weren't needed. Thomas felt Margaret's fingers tighten in his, her presence completing the path as surely as it completed him. The boys circled back to take their free hands, forming their small circle that held everything. The house appeared gradually at the end, not grand or small, but exactly right. wrap-around porch with swing rocking gently, windows glowing with the particular warmth of lamps turned low for reading or waiting or simply being together. The path led directly to the porch steps, each one warm and welcoming, shaped by every foot that had ever climbed them in love. Flowers bloomed along the rails, roses in every colour Margaret had ever planted, forget-me-nots from Thomas's mother's garden, wildflowers Lily had picked in fistfuls. The front door stood open, light spilling out like arms held wide. They walked the final steps together, man, woman, child, past and present made whole, the path glowing brighter beneath their feet in gentle celebration. The boy reached the porch first, turning with shining eyes. "We're here," he announced, voice bright with wonder that needed no more seeking. Thomas and Margaret followed, arms linked, hearts full. They were home, and the path, gentle, generous, and leading always home, waited to guide whoever needed its particular welcome next.